The gentleman yields back the balance of his time. The chair now recognizes the gentleman from Arizona, Mr. Flake, for 5 minutes.
I thank the Speaker. I'll speak for a minute and then refer to a few charts. Today, Mr. Speaker, I rise to draw attention to earmarks contained in the Homeland Security Appropriation Bill. You know, we may not even have any appropriation bills on the floor this year. What may happen is that we simply do a continuing resolution in September and then sometime in January do a big omnibus bill. And all the earmarks, the thousands and thousands and thousands of earmarks that have been put into the bills through the appropriations process but have never been to the floor will simply be approved with one vote. So it behooves us to do what we can to actually highlight what some of these earmarks are. Now, we know some of the earmarks that are in the Homeland Security bill. We hope that it comes to the floor. It likely won't, so we'll talk about one of them here. Mr. Speaker, there is in the Homeland Security bill something called the Pre-Disaster Mitigation Program. Now, this has not traditionally been earmarked in the Homeland Security bill. It only started last year. Last year and this year, we've earmarked some $75 million total for this account. Now, in this account, some $500,000 were earmarked for Westchester and Rockland counties in New York for pre-disaster mitigation earmarks. This comes on the heels of the same counties getting about $1 million last year. Now, New York State has its share of disasters. I think there were 21 presidential disaster declarations over the past 10 years. But there were just as many in other states that had to go through the regular process whereby grants were awarded on the basis of merit rather than on the basis of, do we have an appropriator? Do we have a high level member of leadership that can get us an earmark for some of these programs? Just for example, parts of Oklahoma, they had 20 disaster areas declared in the last 10 years, yet Oklahoma hasn't received a dime in earmark funding in this bill. They must not have an appropriator here. Now, we often hear, endlessly hear, that members of Congress know their districts better than some faceless bureaucrat. That's why they've got to earmark. But let me ask, does a member of the Appropriations Committee or a member of leadership know their district better than a rank-and-file member? Because the former are getting most of the earmarks at the expense of the latter. Let me refer to this chart. In this chart, in the last 2 years for pre-disaster mitigation earmarks in the Homeland Security bill, rank-and-file members get about 37% of the earmarks. Here, appropriators and other highly ranked members, 63%. Of the 75 million total, 63% of the earmarks are received by just 27% of the members in this body. Now again, do those 27% know their districts better than others? I would suggest not. It's just that they're in a position to get these earmarks. So all this highfalutin language about, we know our districts means just this. I'm in a position to get money from my district at the expense of others. Whether or not there's a federal nexus, whether there's a real need, let me just point out that in terms of Westchester and Rockland counties, only 11 counties, of all the thousands of counties in the country, only 11 were wealthier than Westchester County in New York. Does Westchester County really need $500,000 in pre-disaster mitigation earmarks at the expense of some poor county somewhere else in the country? This earmarking, as we all know, has gotten completely out of control. Let me just go to a couple of other charts. One of the other oft-used justifications for earmarks is that we as the legislative branch, we have the power of the purse. Article 1 gives us the power of the purse. That is certainly true. That is often taken as justification for doing the earmarking that we currently do, for the contemporary practice of earmarking. Well, let me just show, at my request, I asked CRS to actually look and see what the Appropriations Committee has been doing over the past several years as the practice of earmarking has really grown. As you can see, from the 104th Congress to the 109th Congress, this is a line here. This is earmarking. We've gone from about 1,500 earmarks up to nearly 10,000 just on this chart. But when you look at the number of witnesses called before the Appropriations Committee for hearing to actually look at what we're spending, that line goes down. That line is in the blue. So what we're seeing is that as earmarking has grown, real oversight has declined. Any way you look at it. If you want to look at numbers of witnesses, some people will say, well, that's not, you can't tell everything from that. I concede that. So let's look at the number of days of hearings. Here in the blue from the 104th Congress to the 109th, we've had a decline in the numbers of days of hearings, yet a huge increase in earmarking. Now keep in mind, another justification for earmarking is people will say, well, that only represents about 2% of the federal budget. We ought to really worry about the rest of the budget, not just earmarking. Well, that's true. We should worry about the rest of the budget, but because of earmarking, we simply aren't. Now, I would suggest that the reason that there are fewer days of hearings, reason that the number of witnesses has declined, and also the number of survey and investigation staff reports has declined as earmarks have grown, is we simply don't have the time or the resources, or the inclination, frankly, in the Appropriations Committee to actually do real oversight. And so for getting just a couple of percentage points of all of the federal spending designated to earmarks, we really give up the power of the purse that we have. That's why we've seen other spending, all discretionary spending, grow by leaps and bounds as we've had earmarking go up, is because we simply don't look at the rest of the spending. So earmarking, we all know, the party that is now in the majority made a lot of hay over the past couple of years that this Congress had grown into, there was a culture of corruption here. And if that were the case, certainly earmarks were the currency of corruption. And that continues. It simply opens up too many opportunities when members of Congress can, without real oversight, write checks to people from home, either campaign contributors or to constituent groups or to anybody. Unless we really come on the floor and do real oversight, this is going to happen. And when you have a process like it looks like we're going to have this year, where we don't even have appropriation bills on the floor where we can challenge these earmarks go unchallenged. That, Mr. Speaker, I think is certainly unacceptable. This body deserves better. We have a great and storied institution here, and we have a time-honored process of authorization, appropriation, and oversight. We have skirted that for the past several years. Those in power now might point out 104th Congress to the 109th, that was all under Republican rule. That is true, but the trend has not changed since we've had the new majority. And with that, Mr. Speaker, I yield back.
The gentleman's time has expired.